A really hot topic in our community right now is the opioid epidemic and the overdose prevention sites. Hi, I'm Tina Brigley, the host of In and Out of Your Mind on We Digital. Our guests today are going to shed some light on this hot topic and give us real-life solutions that can work in our community. I want to welcome DiNunzio and Brandon Bailey for being here today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Like, I hear the topics opioid addictions and the epidemics, but really I feel like I live a sheltered life and don't really even know what is happening in our community. So, Brandon, I just want to ask you, because you have some experience with this, like what's really going on in our community when it comes to opioid addictions and the epidemic?
Well, it's definitely a lot of loss right now. In the last week alone, there's been 5 deaths that I know of. Yeah, like last year in all of Ontario was 1,261 people had passed away. Across Canada was over 4,000. We don't know the numbers yet for this year, but just in the last month, there's probably between 10 and 15. So.
Wow, and that's a real problem, right? So now, Chris, did you start a company in Alberta that helped with this situation, or tell us, there's something going on out west that's really working, so can you share that with us?
So I guess it was a bunch of investors for the city of Edmonton that got together, and they built what we called the hotel, and where they would bring people that homeless or mental health addictions, some people coming straight out of criminal facilities. And we were able to bring them to one location where we provided resources, education, the overdose prevention, and that seems to be flourishing. And that started in 2013. So I was the director of security on that committee, and it's something that's kind of really progressed there, and definitely helped the community.
That's amazing. And now, Brandon, we were talking about these overdose prevention sites. Now, I know when I talk to some people about it, they're saying, absolutely no way, don't bring it in our community. We don't want these overdose prevention sites. It's just facilitating, drug use in our community. What do you have to say about that?
Well, the opposite isn't working. So right now, it's a lot of throwing people in jail because they use drugs for drug possession. And as we're seeing, all it's doing is increasing the rate of usage. So the opposite would be to lead with a voice of compassion instead of the iron fist. And through compassion and getting to showing people that you're willing to reach them where they're at, and provide services for them, it's really beneficial. Right now, Windsor is full of all of our programs are abstinence based. And abstinence doesn't work for everybody. It does work for a lot of people, but it's not for everybody. And some people are just not ready to get sober today, but that doesn't mean that they deserve life any less than anybody else. Mm-hmm.
So now, what would these overdose prevention sites look like?
Well, a person would come in, the tent that we had set up, you would come in, there was an area to use, there's clean needles, different harm reduction type kits. So it would, we have naloxone on hand, we have medical professionals, we have people who are social workers, just different people that are professionals in their fields that are there. Right now, because of it being a site that is not regulated, we wouldn't, a lot of people can't risk the fact of losing their medical license. So if it was regulated, it's something where a lot of nurses and social workers and doctors and just different people of the types of professionals that you need to have in there, they're not able to risk themselves at this point. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if it was regulated, then we would be able to have all of the resources that Chris was talking about out in Edmonton, and that are happening all across the West Coast, really.
So what do you think, I don't know who wants to answer this question, but what is the resistance? Why isn't this regulated? Why isn't this something that's in our community already? What are the obstacles that we're up against here?
I think it's fear of education, actually. Or fear and lack of education, I should say. I think that people aren't aware of these other programs and what other cities are doing and the help that they're providing to the people with addictions and mental health and all the things that come with that. I think it's a lot of fear in the unknown. If you want to touch on that.
Yeah, it's definitely fear of the unknown. What I've noticed is a lot of people have this preconceived notion of what they think is going to happen, the like raise in crime, that it's going to, it's just a lot of negative outlook on what it would be because of fear of the unknown. I've seen a lot of different pictures painted that are like misinformed. The amount of times that we've been told that we are going to be giving people drugs when there's no drugs at all, anything to do with any of us staff. So what I find is a lot of people who are on one side and they're feeling one way, we've been able to like teach them a lot of things, and we have had a lot of people over time that have been a lot more open-minded to it. But yeah, it's definitely that fear, that fear that of the unknown, that something's going to happen, and what if somebody dies? What if this? What if that? It's a lot of what ifs,
Right.
where during these talks and what ifs, people are continuing to die. So.
And I know like what's coming up for me, and if it's coming up for me, it's probably coming up for some of the viewing audience, is that drugs are illegal. So why give people a space to do illegal activities? So what would you say to that?
Decriminalize all drugs. So I know that sounds like a crazy thing, but by throwing people in jail, you're keeping them put in this system of oppression. And by keeping them in oppression, it's just this circle. And it's the cycle that's never ending, where the war on drugs is not working. If drugs were to be legalized, or well, decriminalized first, a lot of the time when a person who uses drugs, they spend their day trying to come up with a way to come up with drugs. And so when you have to come up with a scheme, or come up with some sort of short work. It could be panhandling. Like, it's not everybody that uses drugs is out there committing crimes, and I think that's it's a judgment put on people. But there are a lot of people doing legal things to get drugs. But when they have to come up with these ways on how to get drugs, they're spending all day doing that, and then they're getting the drugs they're using, and their day is wasted by doing all of that stuff. Where if it was decriminalized and they were able to get them through a pharmacy and they were regulated that way, they could go to work, get their drugs, go on with their life. And it's they're starting to use prescription heroin in British Columbia and in Vancouver. It's a pilot project. And the way that they're seeing that people are becoming progressive members of society all over again because they're not having to go through that cycle. So it's really as easy as, like, of course there's a learning curve to it, just like anything, but it's really that easy as to the decriminalization of all drugs across the board, because right now that criminalizing drugs is criminalizing people, and it's our human right to decide if we want to put something in our body or not. So.
And now what about the issue of security? Like if there are people, right, that something goes wrong, they're going to these overdose prevention sites, and you don't know how sometimes people might react on the drugs that they're on, or I know people would have a concern about that, right? Like, so is there some sort of mechanism in place, like for security?
I think the people that are running the overdose prevention sites have the education and to facilitate that. I think when you're speaking on the security end, it's going to be the neighborhood around that prevention site, right? That people are going to be worried about their safety and their security. Obviously, police, they don't have the resources to do that, so that's something where you could look into a private security firm to handle some of that in that area. But I don't think putting security inside the prevention site would be necessarily the best bet, and I'm sure Brandon can agree. A lot of people that do have addictions become fearful of a uniform because of the oppression.
I mean, I really want to thank you guys for being here, because this is a very controversial topic. Like what you guys are proposing, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the community that don't necessarily agree with it. And, thank you for having the courage to take a stand for people, because that's what we're really doing, right? We're supporting all people in our community. And whether we agree or disagree, the reality is that people in our community are addicted to these opiates, and our schools, our communities, our alleyways are being cluttered with needles. and paraphernalia. And our schools do not need this in our community. So if there is a place where, people can do this safely and, avoid the risk of overdosing alone, it's something to consider. So thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Leave a comment below this video. What are your thoughts? What are your opinions? Is it a yes? Is it a no? What are your concerns? Let's talk about that. Thank you for watching In and Out of Your Mind on We Digital, and I'll see you back here next week.